The 20th of June, 1899, Volume 2, The Love with which St. Aloysius operated. It continues always in the same way. This morning it seems that Jesus wanted to cheer me a little bit after I had gone in search for him for some time. I saw a child from afar, like lightning that falls down from heaven. I ran up to him, and as I arrived I took him in my arms. A doubt came to me that it might not be Jesus, so I said to him, "My dear little treasure, tell me, who are you?" And he, "I am your dear and beloved Jesus." And I to him, "My beautiful little baby, I pray you to take my heart and bring it with you to paradise, for after the heart the soul too will come." Jesus seemed to take my heart, and he united it so much with his own that they became one. Afterwards, heaven opened. It seemed that a very great feast was being prepared. At that very moment, a young man of lovely appearance came down from heaven, all dazzling with fire and flames. Jesus told me, "Tomorrow is the feast of my dear Aloysius. I must go attend." And I, "And so you leave me alone. What shall I do?" And he, "You too will come. Look at how beautiful Aloysius is. But the greatest thing in him, which distinguished him on earth, was the love with which he operated. Everything was love in him. Love occupied him interiorly. Love surrounded him externally. So one can say that even his breath was love. This is why it is said of him that he never suffered distraction, because love inundated him everywhere, and with this love he will be inundated eternally, as you see. And in fact, it seemed that the love of St. Aloysius was so very great as to be able to burn the whole world to ashes. Then Jesus added, "I stroll over the highest mountains, and there I form my delight." Since I did not understand the meaning of it, he continued, "The highest mountains are the saints who have loved me the most, and in them I form my delight, both when they are on earth and when they pass into heaven. So everything is in love." After this, I prayed Jesus to bless me and those whom I was seeing at that moment, and he, giving his blessing, disappeared. End of the reading. The 20th of June, 1900, Volume 3, The Most Perfect Humility Produces the Most Intimate Union with God in the Soul. This morning, as I was outside of myself and not finding my highest good, I had to go round and round in search of him, and when I tired myself to the point of feeling faint, I felt him behind my shoulders sustaining me. So I stretched out my hand, and I pulled him to the front, saying to him, "My beloved, you know that I cannot be without you, and yet you make me wait so much, to the point of causing me to faint. Tell me at least, what is the cause of this? Where have I offended you, that you subject me to torment so cruel, to martyrdom so painful, which is your privation?" And Jesus, interrupting my speaking, told me, my daughter, do not add more torment to my heart, which is embittered to the summit, finding itself in a continuous fight because of the violences that everyone does to me continuously. The iniquities of men do violence to me, as they draw justice upon themselves and force me to chastise them. And justice, clashing in a continuous fight with the love I have for men, tortures my heart in such a painful way as to make me die continuously. You do violence to me, because when I come, knowing the chastisements that I am sending, you do not remain quiet, no, but you force me, you do violence to me, and do not want me to chastise. And knowing that you cannot do otherwise in my presence, so as not to expose my heart to a yet fiercer fight, I abstain from coming. Therefore do not want to force me to come for now. Let me give vent to my fury, and do not want to increase my pains with your speaking. As for the rest, I do not want you to think about it, because the most perfect, the most sublime humility is that of losing every reason and of not discoursing on why and how, but of undoing oneself in one's own nothingness. And while the soul does this, without realizing, she finds herself dissolved in God, and this produces in the soul the union most intimate, the love most perfect toward her highest good. This, however, to the greatest advantage of the soul, because in losing her own reason she acquires divine reason, and in losing every discoursing about herself, whether she's cold or warm, whether the things that happen to her are favourable or adverse, she will be interested in and will acquire a language full celestial and divine. In addition to this, humility produces the garment of safety in the soul in such a way that, wrapped in this garment of safety, the soul remains in the most profound calm, embellishing all of herself in order to be pleasing to her dearest and beloved Jesus. Who can say how surprised I was left by this speaking of his? I had not a word to answer him. Then, after a little while, he disappeared, and I found myself inside myself. Calm, yes, but afflicted to the summit. First, because of the afflictions and fights which my dear Jesus was in, and then out of fear that he might not come. Who would be able to endure? How will I be able to bear myself because of his absence? Ah, Lord, give me the strength to bear this martyrdom so hard, so unbearable for my poor soul. After all, say whatever you want, but I will not neglect any means. I will try all ways. I will use all stratagems to draw you to come. End of the reading. The 6th of June 1904, Volume 6, Victim Souls are the Daughters of Mercy. After I struggled very much, Blessed Jesus came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, human perfidy has reached such a point as to exhaust my mercy on its part. But my goodness is so great as to constitute daughters of mercy, so that on the part of creatures also this attribute may not be exhausted. These are the victims, who are in full ownership of the divine will, having destroyed their own. In fact, in these souls, the container given by me in creating them is in full vigour, and since they have received the particle of my mercy, being daughters, they administer it to others. It is understood, however, that in order to be able to administer the particle of my mercy to others, they themselves must be in justice. And I, Lord, who can ever be in justice? And he, one who does not commit grave sins and abstains from committing the slightest venial sins of his own will. End of the reading. The 20th of June 1906, Volume 7. Everything must be reduced to one single point. Everything must become a flame. Feeling very much in suffering, soul and body, and having spent the night with a flaming fever, I felt I was burning and being consumed. My strengths were exhausted. I felt I was dying, and added to that, he was not coming. Truly, I could take no more. Then, after a long time, I felt I was going outside of myself, and as I saw our Lord within an immense light, and myself completely nailed, even the tiniest particles of my members. It was not just my hands and feet, like other times, but each of my bones had its nail driven into it. Oh, how many bitter pains I felt! At each slightest motion, I felt lacerated by those nails, and I fainted. I felt I was about to die. but I was resigned and immersed in the divine volition, which seemed to me to be the key that would open divine treasures from which I would draw strength to be sustained in that state of sufferings to the point of making me content and happy. However, I was burning. Those nails seemed to produce fire, and I was all immersed in it. Blessed Jesus was looking at me and seemed to be pleased. Then he told me, "My daughter, everything must be reduced to one single point. That is, everything must become a flame. And from this flame, filtered, pressed, beaten, a most pure light comes out, not like the light of fire, but of sun, fully similar to the light that surrounds me. The soul who has become light cannot be away from the divine light. Rather, my light absorbs her into itself and transports her into heaven. Therefore, courage. This is the complete crucifixion of soul and body. Don't you see how your light is already about to take off from the flame, and my light awaits it in order to absorb it?" While he was saying this, I looked at myself and I saw a great flame inside of me. A tiny little flame of light came out of it, which was about to detach itself and take flight. Who can describe my contentment? At the thought of dying, at the thought of being always with my only and highest good, with my life, with my centre, I felt paradise in advance. End of the reading. The 20th of June 1918, Volume 12. Doing the office of priest, Jesus consecrates the souls who live in his will. Continuing in my usual state, my sweet Jesus made himself seen around me, all full of attentions. He seemed to be watching me in everything. As he was doing this, a rope came out from his heart, coming toward my heart. And if I was attentive, the rope fixed in my heart, and Jesus moved this rope and amused himself. Then my beloved Jesus told me, "My daughter, I am all attention for souls. If they reciprocate me, paying as much attention to me, the ropes of my love remain fixed in their heart, and I multiply my attentions and amuse myself. Otherwise, the ropes remain loose, and my love rejected and saddened." Then he added, "In the one who does my will and lives in it, my love does not find obstruction. I love her and have so much predilection for her that I myself take care of all that is needed for her, both help and direction, both unforeseen aids and unexpected graces. Even more, I am jealous that others may do something. I myself want to do everything for her. I reach so much jealousy of love that if I give to priests the authority to consecrate me in the sacramental hosts so that I may be given to souls, I reserve to myself the privilege to consecrate these souls as they keep repeating their acts in my will, as they resign themselves, and as they make the human will go out, in order to let the divine will enter. What the priest does over the host, I do with them. And not only once, every time she repeats her acts in my will, she calls me as a powerful magnet, and I consecrate her like a privileged host, repeating over her the words of the consecration. I do this with justice because the soul who does my will sacrifices herself more than those souls who receive communion but do not do my will. They empty themselves to take on me. They give me full dominion, and if needed, they are ready to suffer any pain in order to do my will. So I cannot wait. My love cannot contain itself from communicating me to them until when it is convenient to the priest to give them the sacramental host. Therefore I do everything by myself. Oh, how many times I communicate myself before the priest feels comfortable to communicate her himself. If this were not the case, my love would remain as though hampered, and bound in the sacraments. No, I am free. I have the sacraments inside my heart. I am the owner, and I can exercise them whenever I want. And while he was saying this, he seemed to be wandering everywhere to see if there were souls who did his will, in order to consecrate them. How beautiful it was to see lovable Jesus going around as though in a hurry, doing the office of priest, and to hear him repeat the words of the consecration over those souls who do his will and live in it. Oh, blessed are those souls who, by doing his most holy will, receive the consecration of Jesus. End of the reading. The 20th of June 1921, Volume 13, Simile of the Son and One Who Lives in the Divine Will. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus came, but all majesty and love. He took my right hand in his hand, and drawing near my heart, he kissed it. Then he clasped my head with both hands, keeping them over my head for some time. Who can say what I felt being infused in me? He alone can tell what he was infusing in me. Then he told me, "Daughter of my will, my volition fills you, and in order to keep this will of mine in you, I offer myself as the keeper of my own will. The gift which I placed in you is so great that I do not want to leave it at your mercy, because you would not have sufficient care in order to keep it. Therefore, not only will I be its defense, but I will help you to make it pour outside in such a way that the mark of my will be seen everywhere." Then he added, "One who lives in my will must be as the centre of everything. Look at the sun up there in the heavens. One can see the centre of its light, its circle, but the light and the heat it spreads beat and fill the whole earth, becoming life and light of all nature. In the same way, one who lives in my will must live as though circumfused within my own centre, which is life of everything. These souls are more than sun. They are also light, heat, and fecundity of all goods. Those who do not live completely in my will can be called plants, flowers, trees, which receive light, heat, and fecundity from these suns, and living down below they are subject to grow and to decrease, and are exposed to winds, to frost, to storms. On the other hand, one who lives in my will, like sun, excels over all, triumphs and conquers everything. And while he touches everything and becomes life of everything, he is intangible, nor does he let anyone touch him, because since he lives up high, nobody can reach him." End of the reading. The 20th of June, 1924, Volume 17. How the Divine Will contains the fullness of happiness and the second humanity of our Lord. As I was in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself, together with my most sweet Jesus. He was all goodness and all admirable. He took my hands in his and pressed them tightly to his breast, and all love told me, "My beloved daughter, if you knew what pleasure, what taste I feel in speaking to you about my will. Every additional thing I manifest to you on my will is one happiness I unleash from me, and which communicates itself to the creature, and I feel happier in her by virtue of my own happiness. In fact, the distinctive speciality of my will is exactly this: to make God and man happy. Don't you remember, my daughter, how much we delighted together, I in speaking to you and you in listening to me, and how we made each other happy? And since my will alone contains the seed of happiness, I by manifesting it and the soul by knowing it, form the plant and the fruits of true, everlasting, and eternal happiness, which never ceases. And not only us, but also those who listen to or read the admirable and surprising things of my will, feel the sweet enchantment of my happiness. Therefore, in order to make myself happy in my works, I want to speak to you of the nobility of my will, of where the soul can reach, and of what she can enclose if she lets my will enter. The nobility of my will is divine, and since it comes from heaven, it does not descend if not in one in whom it finds a noble court. And so the first one to let it enter was my humanity. It is not content with little, but it wants everything, because it wants to give everything. And how can it give everything if it does not find everything for itself to be able to place all of its goods in it? So my humanity gave it the holy and noble court, and it centralized everything and everyone in me. See then, in order for my will to come and reign in the soul must enclose within herself all that my humanity did. And if the other creatures have shared in part in the fruits of my redemption, according to their dispositions, this creature will concentrate them all in order to form the noble court to my will, and my will concentrate in the soul the love which it gives and wants to give to all, in order to receive the love of all and of each one. It is not content with finding in her the return of her love alone, but it wants the return of all. My will wants to find in the soul in whom it wants to reign all the relations which exist in creation between creator and creature. Otherwise, its happiness would not be full, nor would it find all of its things or itself. My will must be able to say in the soul in whom it reigns, here I find my happiness. In spite of this, if no one loved me or requited me, I would always be happy in myself. No one can sadden my happiness, because in this will of mine, I find everything, I receive everything, and I can give everything. I would repeat the sentence which is in the three divine persons. We are intangible. As much as the creatures might do, no one can touch us or even slightly shade our eternal and immutable happiness. Only one who possesses our will can touch us lovingly and can become one with us, because in this way the creature would be happy of our own happiness, and so we remain glorified by the happiness of the creature. Only when my will reign in the creature in a complete way, then will charity reach complete perfection in the creature, because then, by virtue of my will, everyone will be found in every creature, loved, defended, and sustained, just as her Creator loves her, defends her, and sustains her. Each one will be transfused in the others as in one's own life. Then all virtues will reach complete perfection, because they will not be nourished by human life, but by divine life. Therefore, I needed two humanities, my own in order to form the redemption, and the other of one creature to form the fiat voluntas tua, on earth as it is in heaven. One more necessary than the other, because if in the first one I was to come to redeem man, in the second I was to come to restore him to the only purpose for which he was created, to open the currents of graces between the human will and the divine, and to make the divine reign on earth as it does in heaven. And just as my humanity, in order to redeem man, let my will reign on earth as it does in heaven, so do I keep looking for another humanity, which, letting it reign within itself on earth as it does in heaven, may let me accomplish all the designs of my creation. Therefore be attentive in letting my will alone reign in you, and I will love you with the same love with which I love my most holy humanity. End of the reading. The 20th of June, 1925, Volume 17. How the soul who makes the divine will live within herself sets divine joys and beatitudes in motion. I felt immersed in the holy will of God, and my sweet Jesus, drawing me to himself, squeezed me very tightly in his arms. And then he said to me, "My daughter, oh, how beautiful is my rest in the soul who has my will as life, and who lets my will act and love entirely and completely within her. You must know that as the soul breathes, palpitates, works, thinks, loves, acts, even though everything is carried out within her, since my will has become the centre of life in her, it is my will that breathes, palpitates, loves, thinks, acts, gives motion to her work, circulation to her blood, thought to her mind, love to her heart, and the like. Now, since this will is the same as the one which the three divine persons have, it happens that they feel within them the breath of the soul, her heartbeat, her motion. And since every time our will decides to form one act, it releases from us new joys, new beatitudes, new happinesses, which, harmonizing everything among the three divine persons, they form immense seas of new happiness, and enwrapping all the blessed, these remain enraptured within these joys and are shaken by this rapture. And while they are shaken, they remain enraptured more strongly within our immeasurable beatitudes. Using our will, she wants to form more acts of will to make us happy and to make us release more beatitudes. Now, the soul who lets our will live within her reaches such a point that as she lets it operate, she gives us the occasion to set our beatitudes, our harmonies, and the infinite joys of our love in motion. She makes us release new beauties and new glories of ours. Our will operating in the creature is so very pleasing, tender, and lovable to us. It makes us new surprises. It sets our things in motion in order to give us the return of our glory, of our love, of our happinesses. And all this through the creature who has given the place within herself to let our will live. How not to love this birth from our will? More so, since our will renders this creature more lovable, gracious, beautiful to us, in such a way that in no one else do we find her qualities. She is a work done by our will with such mastery as to enchant all of heaven, and to render her lovable to all, and even more so to the sacrosanct Trinity. And while he was saying this, he squeezed me more tightly, and letting me place my mouth in his heart, he added, "You true, drink our beatitudes in large gulps, satiate yourself in the way you want, and as much as you want." End of the reading. The 20th of June, 1926, Volume 19. Ecce Homo. Jesus felt as many deaths for as many as were those who cried out, "Crucify him." One who lives in the divine will takes the fruit of the pains of Jesus. The ideal of Jesus in creation was the kingdom of his will in souls. After going through most bitter days because of the privation of my sweet Jesus, I felt I could take no more. I moaned under a press that crushed my soul and body, and I longed for my celestial fatherland, in which not even for one instant would I be without the one who is all my life and my highest and only good. Then when I reduced myself to the extremes without Jesus, I felt myself being filled completely with him in such a way that I remained like a veil that covered him. And since I was thinking about the pains of his passion and accompanying him, especially in the act in which Pilate showed him to the people, saying, Ecce homo, my sweet Jesus told me, my daughter, as Pilate said, Ecce homo, all cried out, crucify him, we want him dead. And so did my very celestial Father and my inseparable and pious Mama, and not only those who were present, but all the absent and all generations past and future. And if someone did not say it with words, he said it with facts, because there was not a single one who said he wanted me alive, and to keep silent is confirmation of what others want. This cry of death from all was so very painful for me. I felt as many deaths for as many as were the people who cried out, crucify him. I felt as though drowned with pains and with death. More so since I could see that each death of mine would not bring life to each one, and those who received life because of my death would not receive all the complete fruit of my passion and death. My sorrow was so great that my moaning humanity was about to succumb and breathe its last. But while I was dying, with its all-seeingness, my supreme will made present to my dying humanity all those who would let the eternal volition reign in them with absolute dominion, who would take the complete fruit of my passion and death. Among them was my dear mother as their head. She took all the deposit of all my goods and of the fruits contained in my life, passion, and death. Not even one breath of mine did she allow to be lost, nor did she fail to keep its precious fruit in her custody. And from her they were to be transmitted to the little newborn of my will, and to all those in whom the supreme volition would have its life and its kingdom. When my extinguishing humanity saw the complete fruit of my life, passion, and death placed in safety and secured, it was able to resume and continue the course of its sorrowful passion. So it is my will alone that brings all the fullness of my goods and the complete fruit contained in creation, redemption, and sanctification. Wherever it reigns, our works are all full of life. Nothing is halved or incomplete, while there it does not reign, even if some virtues were present. Everything is misery, everything incomplete, and if they produce any fruit at all, it is unripe and without maturity. And if they take the fruits of my redemption, they take them with measure and without abundance. Therefore they grow as weak, sick, and feverish. And if they do a little bit of good, they do it strained, and they feel crushed under the weight of that bit of good that they do. On the other hand, my will empties the human will, and in that void it places the divine strength and the life of good. Therefore, one who lets it reign within herself does good without strain, and the life she contains leads her to operate good with an irresistible strength. So my humanity found life in my passion and death, and in those in whom my will would reign. Therefore, creation and redemption will always be incomplete until my will has its kingdom in souls. After this, I was doing my usual acts in the supreme volition, and my sweet Jesus, coming out from within my interior, followed everything I did with his gaze. And since he saw that all my acts identified with his, and by virtue of the supreme will, they followed the same course as his acts, and repeated the same good and the same glory for our celestial Father, taken by an emphasis of love, he clasped me to his heart and told me, my daughter, even though you are little and newly born in my will, and you live in the kingdom of my will, your littleness is my triumph. And when I see you operate in it, I find myself in the kingdom of my will, like a king who has fought a long war. Since his ideal was victory, in seeing himself victorious, he feels cheered of the bloody battle, from the hardships suffered, and from the wounds still impressed on his person. And his triumph is formed as he sees himself surrounded by the conquests he has made. The king wants to look at everything. His gaze wants to delight in the kingdom conquered, and triumphant, he smiles and makes feast. So I am. My ideal in creation was the kingdom of my will in the soul of the creature. My primary purpose was to make of man the image of the divine Trinity by virtue of the fulfillment of my will upon him. But as man withdrew from it, I lost my kingdom in him. And for as long as 6,000 years I had to sustain a long battle. But long as it has been, I have not dismissed my ideal and my primary purpose, nor will I dismiss it. And if I came in redemption, I came to realize my ideal and my primary purpose, that is, the kingdom of my will in souls. This is so true that in order to come, I formed my first kingdom of the supreme volition in the heart of my immaculate Mama. Outside of my kingdom, I would never have come upon earth. Then I suffered hardships and pains. I was wounded and killed at last, but the kingdom of my will was not realized. I laid the foundations, I made some preparations, but the bloody battle between the human will and the divine has yet continued. Now, my little daughter, when I see you operate in the kingdom of my will, and as you operate, its kingdom is established more and more in you, I feel victorious in my long battle, and everything around me takes the attitude of triumph and feast. My pains, the hardships, the wounds smile at me, and my very death gives me back the life of my will in you. So I feel victorious in creation and in redemption. Even more, they serve to form the long rounds for the newborn of my will, her rapid flights, her endless strolls in the kingdom of my will. And so I boast in triumph, and delighting, I follow with my gaze all the steps and acts of my little daughter. See, all have their ideal, and when they realize it, only then are they content. The little baby also has his ideal, to attach himself to the breast of his mamma, and while he cries and sobs, as soon as his mamma opens her lap to him, the baby stops crying, takes on a smile, and flinging himself, he attaches himself to the breast of his mamma, and victorious he suckles and suckles until he is full. And while he suckles triumphant, he takes his sweet sleep. So I am. After long crying, when I see the lap of a soul who opens the doors to me, to give place to the kingdom of my will, my tears stop, and flinging myself onto her lap, I attach myself to her, and suckling her love and the fruits of the kingdom of my will, I take my sweet sleep, and I rest victorious. Even the tiny little bird, its ideal is the seed, and when it sees it, it beats its wings, it runs, hurls itself over the seed. Victorious, it grabs it with its beak, and triumphant, it continues its flight. So I am. I fly and fly. I go round and round to form the kingdom of my will in the soul, that she may form for me the seed to nourish me, because I use no other food but that which is formed in my kingdom. And when I see this celestial seed, more than little bird, I fly to make of it my food. So for each, everything is in realizing the ideal one has set for himself. This is why when I see you operate in the kingdom of my will, I see my ideal realized, and I feel repaid for the work of creation and redemption, and the triumph of my will is established in you. Therefore, be attentive, and let the victory of your Jesus be permanent in you. Then after this, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior, and all tenderness told me, My daughter, tell me, what about your ideal, your purpose? What is it? And I, my love, Jesus, my ideal is to fulfill your will, and all my purpose is to reach the point at which no thought, word, heartbeat, and work of mine may ever go out of the kingdom of your supreme will. Even more, in it may they be conceived, nourished, raised, and form their life, and if needed, also their death. Though I know that in your will no act dies, but once it is born, it lives eternally. So it is the kingdom of your will in my poor soul that I long for, and this is all my ideal and my primary and ultimate purpose. And Jesus, all love and making feast, added, my daughter, so my ideal and yours are one, and therefore one is our purpose. Brava, brava, the little daughter of my will. And since your ideal and mine are one, you too have sustained the battle of long years to conquer the kingdom of my will. You had to endure pains, privations, and have been even a prisoner in your little room, bound to your little bed, to conquer that kingdom so much wanted and longed for by me and by you. It cost much to both of us. And now we are both triumphant and conquerors. So you too are the little queen in the kingdom of my will. And even though little, you are always queen, because you are the daughter of the great King, of our celestial Father. Therefore, as conqueror of a kingdom so great, take possession of all creation, of all redemption, and of all heaven. Everything is yours, because your rights of possession extend wherever my will reigns as whole and permanent, all are waiting for you to give you the honours that befit your victory. You too are the little baby who has so much cried and longed for her Jesus. But as soon as you have seen me, your tears have stopped, and flinging yourself onto my lap, you have attached yourself to my breast, and victorious you have suckled my will and my love, as though in triumph you have taken rest in my very arms. And I rocked you so that your sleep might be longer, and I might enjoy my newborn in my own arms. And triumphant, I extended the kingdom of my will in you. Also, you are the tiny little dove that has gone around and around me, and while I spoke to you about my will, manifesting to you the knowledges about it, its goods, its prodigies, and even its sorrow, you beat your wings, and hurling yourself over the many seeds I placed before you, you grabbed them with your beak, and triumphant, you continued your flight around me, waiting for more seeds of my will, which I would place before you. And again, grabbing them with your beak, you nourished yourself, and victorious continued your flight, manifesting the kingdom of my will. So my prerogatives are yours. My kingdom and yours are one. We have suffered together. It is right that together we enjoy our conquests. I remained surprised on hearing this, and I thought to myself, but is it really true that in my poor soul there is this kingdom of the supreme will? I felt all confused, and if I wrote this, I did it to obey. But as I am writing, Jesus has surprised me, and coming out from within my interior, he has thrown his arms around my neck, squeezing me so very tightly to the point that I could not write any more, because my poor head was no longer in me. But immediately Jesus disappeared, and I continued writing. So while I was afraid, Jesus told me, my daughter, my celestial mamma, was able to give me to others because she conceived me within herself. She raised me and nourished me. No one can give something he does not have. And if she gave me to the other creatures, it was because she possessed me. Now, I would never have told you so much about my will had I not wanted to form its kingdom in you, nor would you have loved it so much had it not been yours. The things that are not one's own are kept reluctantly and cause bother and weight. Had you not had the springing fount of the kingdom of my will within you, you would not have been able to repeat what I have told you, nor put it on paper. Lacking the possession, you would lack the light and the love to manifest it. So if the sun shines in you and with its rays it feeds you the words, the knowledges, and how it wants to reign, it is a sign that you possess it. And therefore your task is to make it known, just as the task of the sovereign queen was to make me known and to give me for the salvation of all. End of the reading.